Well, hey there, everybody. How's it going tonight? Today is Monday, May 3rd or 4th, 2020. It doesn't really fucking matter anymore. You know, there's a lot going on out there. I just realized I was wearing my Mirror Pond shirt today. I've had this for probably 15, 20 years. And then today I went to the store wearing it, and I actually ran and grabbed a half rack as I was leaving the store of Mirror Pond. They've changed the label on the beer bottle, but the shirt is old school. This is a Deschutes brewery, Oregon brewery, And I've been drinking this stuff since I was 16 years old. 21. We used to go to a place called Bagby Hot Springs, and around the same time as I was drinking this, or discovered beer, I guess, I wasn't a big drinker when I was a teenager, and I'm glad. But it popped into my mind that we would go up to Bagby Hot Springs when it was snowing. And I remember walking up during this light snow, setting up the big hot tub. And it's a natural hot spring, but they have these wooden tubs. We filled it up, and then we set all of our beer in the snowbank and just sat there, buck-ass naked, just loving it, soaking up, just drinking, enjoying the steam and the moment. And those are the moments that life is all about, in my opinion. It's not the drinking part of it. That's the thing, at all. We actually were drinking apricot ale, some really cheesy ass shit back then. So anyway, tonight I wanted to talk about a few things, and I thought I would get comfortable here. I'm not going to turn this light on like I usually have on my camera because it's just too damn bright. Well, it's not too bad. I can never tell if the camera's going to pick up my face or not. And I'm a little bit warm. But this is my raw self here. And my video is going to be about emotion and how it's okay to not be okay during these times. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there right now that are extremely frustrated about what's going on. And I'm one of them. We're all torn between wanting to protect each other and do the right thing, and then realizing that we can't lock down forever, and that, in a nutshell, we missed the boat on testing, on, being able to get through this without a lot of deaths. So here we are, and we're facing it. There's still a bunch of people pointing the finger, placing blame on others. Right now there's a huge issue about blaming China, and my whole mindset is this. It doesn't matter who's to blame. We're facing it. It's not about the virus itself, and that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm really here to talk about the fallout and the repercussions of that. You know what's funny is when I originally wanted to start this video, my intention was to read this 7-page paper I wrote. As usual, I write these long papers and I never read them. It was called COVID and Capitalism. And I feel like I can lay out my thoughts a lot better on paper. But I feel more comfortable just talking to the camera than I do reading to a microphone. So, anyway, here we are. It's okay to not be okay. And everyone's emotions are on edge right now. I've noticed a lot of people attacking me about certain opinions I have over the last 10 years on YouTube. It's nothing new to me. But certain instances, people are extremely triggered by very slight things right now. And I don't blame them for it. I don't fault people for getting mad about things, because people feel the way they feel. As long as you don't feel violence towards other people or hatred for no specific reason, whatever, opinions are fine. But I guess the only time it really bothers me is when people don't get upset about a situation, but rather direct their anger directly at me. And my subscribers know that's something I won't put up with. If you continuously harass me or, berate me with your own opinions and ad hominem attacks, I just mute people. And so I have a whole list of people I've probably muted. I don't even know or care. I don't have time for bullshit or negativity, but I will respond in kind if people are negative. And I guess that's what I'm getting to here, is that at a time like this, we really need solidarity. Everyone is having problems right now. It doesn't matter. I would say except the extremely rich. Even them, maybe they're not making extra millions. But that's what this paper's about. You know, it's about those poor oil companies that want to be bailed out now. And they're whining because they've lost profits. Even though Exxon was in complete failure before this year. I mean, their stocks had been declining for a long time. And they'd made horrible decisions about where to drill, shale deposits, and I'm not going to get into that, but I almost feel like people are more concerned with the business aspect than the people aspect, which is why I've talked about this in the past here, about how frustrating it is that we just don't seem to care about each other. And a lot of people do, but let me get into some of the points I wanted to make, since this video is going to probably be long. Domestic abuse and child abuse are going to be on the rise right now. Now, this is something I can agree with. For all the people, even though I said I agreed with the initial lockdown, I've been able to assess the situation and say, well, we didn't act quick enough. So the only way to do this is to let people do what they're going to do. There are people protesting in the capitals. There are people, you know, standing out and wanting their rights, wanting to be able to go back to work. And as Americans, we can't really say that they shouldn't be able to, because that is a freedom as an American to run your own business. It is a risk we take that you might get sick and die. But then there's the other side of it, not trying to overwhelm the system. But then there's a completely different side to it, which is people standing on the steps of a Capitol building, lined up with AR-15s and body armor. Now, I'd just like to ask people, look, I'm a full Second Amendment supporter. One of the things that keeps America from being invaded, you know, think about Red Dawn. I watched that again the other day for the 10th time. But, you know, I've always had this, and a lot of men have, this idea that, you know, I don't really give a shit about guns themselves. I'm not a gun fanatic. But I have no problem picking up a rifle to defend my homeland if the shit hits the fan. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. Most people do. But standing on the Capitol and demanding an end to social distancing with a rifle, to me, is just, it's a mindfuck. It shows me that society has got to the point where I'm ready to completely get out. I want to go off-grid. I want to get a cabin. I would like to buy a piece of land and really, not to escape completely society. I still want to interact with people. I just want a community that gives a shit about one another, you know, because I care about people. I really do. And I feel like people use any excuse now to protest and scream about their rights. This has nothing to do with the Second Amendment, but people are out there protesting with their guns to show, look, I can hold my rifle in public. It just doesn't make sense to me. And so, you know, I'm not insulting. As I said, I had to speak, you know, before I even mentioned that, as I said, I'm not anti-gun. I have no problem with firearms to protect an individual or to defend your property. But going up and threatening people with them or demanding action and holding firearms, the question is, what are you trying to achieve? You know, what are you asking for? And I feel like society is falling apart. And it's not the virus that's doing it. We were already sitting on a precipice, you know, just waiting for something like this to happen to trigger social unrest. It's new to us, maybe, but nothing new to other countries. And a lot of Americans are complaining because maybe a lot of the people who are even still doing well want to complain. The real people who should be complaining are the ones who can't find food, the ones who aren't able to pay their rent, the people who actually are really struggling. They have every right to speak out and say, I want to get my life back, and I understand that. We are suckers for routine. But to try to stay on track here, I have a lot to talk about, as I said. I read about this thing that they have in France it's the Triage, basically. And part of this is whenever they have a major incident, and this started after terrorist attacks back in the early 2000s, they started a triage where one of the aspects is not just dealing with a disaster through crisis management or through military or through police, but also a personal crisis management situation, a line for people who had major issues, say calling in, suicides will be on the rise. Yes, all of this is true. There are going to be a lot more depressed people. There are going to be a lot of families that are going to be struggling, a lot more abuse, a lot of child abuse, a lot of families that are locked up in their small-ass domicile where they can't escape. And I'm not going to minimize that. I have to mention that because it's important. The question is this: what's worse, the abuse or the possible suicides or the deaths that could occur from the virus itself? And that's something society has to weigh. I don't make those decisions, all right? I'm not going to pretend like I have all the answers. And as I said, I think that we've done right up to now, but it's not working because we're not testing. We don't have a plan in order to get back to business because we're just going to overwhelm the system. I read an article earlier where somebody says the graph looks like Bart Simpson's hair. And I thought, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. It's going to go up and down and up and down. And people are going to say, oh, look, there's no cases. Let's go back to work. Then we go back to work. Then there's more cases. And meanwhile, we've killed 20,000 of our elderly people in nursing homes. 20,000 just in nursing homes. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, they're old already. Fine, if that's your mentality. But these are our grandparents. Don't forget that. And there are also nurses who are devastated by this, who have to deal with this. It makes it really hard for not just the people who are on the front lines, but also the people like us who are at home. I mean, look, I've had my own mood swings lately, and I'm well under the impression, I've watched things that inspire me and make me want to cry and enlightened. Then the next minute I'm just irritable and angry. And I realize, because I'm in touch with my emotions, I'm not a manly man that can't cry. When I'm upset, I can acknowledge that. And when I analyze it, I think, okay, I can't take that on other people. I shouldn't take that on my family or my kids. There are people out there who are maybe a husband and wife who are locked down and really can't go anywhere. But if they have, let's say, a huge property they can walk on, does it really matter? Well, what about the family of 5 in a small house like us? At least we have a neighborhood and a backyard, so I don't complain. But it could be a lot worse, is my point. It's all perspective. And sometimes I'm just like, this is nothing. Maybe it's just a boost for us to do what we really want to do. But then I think, there's a part of me that can't fight this feeling of frustration because I can sense it in the rest of the family. The kids got pulled out of school. My wife can't go to work. I mean, we went camping for a few days to try to escape it all. And try to escape people. And I'll tell you the story sometime about the fucking Russian dude who showed up in my campsite. We just brought this car seat in. I think I mentioned it in a previous video. He just tried to drop this car seat off of my campsite. I'm like, what are you doing here? Why are you, even coming past my sign and into my campsite? But it was one of those things where you just want to escape for a few days, and I did. But there was, while I was there, I took hundreds, if not 1,000 pictures and videos with my camera. And I thought, there was this one moment I just want to share before I forget, where I had this camera mounted up with my favorite Minolta lens, vintage lens, on a tripod, along with this bar that has a flash and then a remote for it, so I can do really close-up macro photography. And I walked down with the whole tripod down by the river in the evening, and my wife was down there by the creek doing something, and I set it down by the creek, and I said, as soon as I stepped back, I said, whoa, deja vu. It's like, this is so weird. I was like, this is a weird ass deja vu. I turned around for a brief second, and my wife goes, I just hear her go, oh no, your camera. And I was already 20 feet away. I turned around, my whole camera was in the fucking drink, completely submerged in the river. I ran over, grabbed the tripod, pulled it out, it was soaked. I've still got this Minolta lens. I had to take the whole thing apart and it's drying. I popped off the fucking lens, and I tried to put it up by the heater and dry it out and took out the card and everything, and you know what? It actually works. Yeah. I got it to actually function. And I'm pretty stoked for that. because it's not waterproof. I bought a cheaper camera, but I'm getting off track, but there was a point to that. I was able to really cope with that well. I calmly went up and dealt with it, took all the parts off, set them out to dry, took a deep breath. 30 seconds later, that dude walked or drove up to my camp and tried to dump that car seat. And I thought, he came at the worst possible time, when I was probably more frustrated than I'd been, forever. And I kind of went off on the dude, and not too bad, but just saying, dude, you don't dump junk in the woods. I don't care if you got it here or not. You take it with you. He ended up taking it with him. And listening to the video, because I filmed the thing, I just felt like kind of an idiot. I was like, oh God. I was like, dude, I was like, do what you gotta do, and you always feel like an idiot hearing yourself, but I was also proud for myself for standing up and not saying, oh yeah, you could just go ahead and put your car seat in our campsite and we'll deal with it. I actually made him put it back in his car and take it by filming his license plate and saying, hey man, I'll just fucking put this on YouTube. I didn't say that, but he knew that, it was, if I didn't want it there, it was a bad idea, but I'm getting way off track. It was just a great story. The point was that at that moment, even being frustrated, losing my camera was one of the moments where I was like, see, I keep having to go to other back fucking stories. All right, so a couple months ago, I'd been looking for a new camera forever. I had a Lumix G3, not a GH3, an old G3 that you can get for like $100 now. It was a mirrorless camera. I loved it. And the screen never worked, and I could never see myself like I can here on this screen while I'm talking. So I never knew if it was working. I'd have to manually focus it. It was a nightmare. Finally, I said, I'm going to just break down and get a camera. Looked on Craigslist over and over. Found a guy selling 2 Panasonic Lumix G2s, which are not weatherproof. The next line up, I think the G3 or the G4 is weatherproof, and, it's more sealed, which wouldn't have been as an issue dropping it in the drink, right? But the funny thing is that I bought 2 of them I talked the guy down to like $220 or something, or maybe it was around, I don't even remember, like $200, $150, whatever, for 2 cameras and 8 batteries. And I was like stoked. And so when I dropped one, at least I knew I had another one, and that was part of the reason why I got 2. But that's a great long way of explaining that the reason why I take photos is because I want to remember the moment. And it's not just that, because I hardly even look at them, but it's viewing the world through a different lens, for lack of a better term. I mean, when you see things through a photographer's lens, you see things differently. You're always looking for action, for movement, for shadows, for shapes. And for me, that helps me see things. Sometimes we wake up in the morning and the shit just doesn't feel right lately, right? For me, it's hard, but putting on the good old Grateful Dead, some kind of music that helps you like to unwind or to inspire or however you want to feel, is a really important thing. I think we all need that right now. I really do. And I really wanted this video to be on topic, but it's not. It's a rant, so I'll just have to title it as such. Not even a rant, a ramble maybe. But anyhow, so I went camping, and it was really a nice reprieve, regardless of what happened. And when I came back, it's back to normal, what the new normal is. Still can't go to the store without feeling awkward. Still can't go to Trader Joe's because I don't want to wait in line. There's lines at the weed store, lines at the grocery store, lines everywhere, right? And it's hard to do your usual routine, which is something that I kind of welcome. It's change, or I say that as much. But I also like a routine. And it's hard to build a new one when you don't know the future, when it's unpredictable. Say if you're off in the woods and you start building a homestead or a cabin somewhere, you know what you're up against. You've got a history of the wilderness, the animals that live there, the types of trees and plants in the area. You pretty much know where you stand if you've done the research. But when you're facing a worldwide pandemic that might lead to societal collapse, I hate to put it that way, but that's kind of how I feel. I feel like this thing isn't going to kill us all. No way. It's just revealing the weaknesses of the system that so many people celebrate. And so there is a big difference between the way the rich are dealing with this and the way the poor are dealing with this, as I said before. A lot of folks they don't know where their next meal is coming from. But when some politician says, oh, COVID affects us all the same, or when some Instagram influencer talks about how, oh, well, I don't even want to get into it. I fucking hate Instagram, and I hate influencers, and I pretty much hate the whole marketing strategy of the modern world. And I have a secret desire to watch it. Not even secret, I'm telling you all, but I hope it all just completely collapses. I could care less if every single expensive, what you would call, luxury brand. I don't care if every single one of them collapses. I don't care if everything that is unnecessary for human survival and subsistence collapses, as long as we're able to feed one another and give shelter to people. And one of the examples I have for this, and I know that sounds nihilist, but it's not, and I'll get into that. It's utilitarian, is what it is. In California, there are, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, I believe, of houses that are just sitting empty because nobody's been living in them for up to a decade or more, because maybe they were foreclosed in 2008 and never filled. But there's entire areas full of squatters now. People that otherwise refuse to pay their rent in some areas. This is what we're up against, is people, a whole future of a slow decay. And I just want to point this out, because for people who are expecting us to recover from this in a couple of months, you've got another thing coming. It's not going to happen. That's my opinion, and I might be totally wrong. And if I am wrong, that's great. We can all get back to business as usual, which really isn't a good business, but I'm hoping this opens a few fucking eyes to what's really going on out there. I don't know. The fact that our government is pretty much incapable and incompetent, and has been for decades. But regardless, it's important to try to have a positive perspective. I'm going to get past the negative shit, But it's also important to have a perspective where you have a gratitude for what you do have. Like I said, I have a backyard, I have a family. I'm not living alone, I'm not living in depression, although that comes and goes in, the modern times. But the reason I'm making this, I guess, and I've thought about this, why am I even talking about these things, is that I want to help people who also feel like they don't feel okay, or feel like their just emotions aren't in check, and they feel like they should be. That it's okay to not be okay for a while. That's all right. There's nothing wrong with it. It is a natural reaction to a crisis to be in panic mode for a little while. It doesn't mean that you're, oh my God, freaking out. No, of course not. It's just like your heart, your soul. I mean, I can at least sleep like a baby. I sleep just fine, wake up just fine, but there's moments, I was already going through kind of a phase of monotony for a while. So this has kind of, increased it. And fortunately, I'm not an abuser. I love my family. They love me. I treat my kids with respect. But, when you got your kids at home and you're trying to do your own business, your own work, doing your own hobbies, and you have your kids' schoolwork, where they don't want to do their schoolwork online, and you have to inspire them to do it and want to do it, it's hard. It is very difficult. So yeah, I stress too. I have a lot of issues in my own life that I stress about. So I guess that's my way of saying my apologies if I go off on anyone for a comment they leave and maybe I take it the wrong way. We all know that texts and comments are mistaken. So don't be some sensitive Sally and be like, oh no, Carpo said this to me. You know, I'm just a dude. I'm just another dude. You know, I mean, even the arguments I've had with a lot of people, it's just really a pointless waste of time, a majority of the discussions. But anyhow, using now as a time to rethink your life, our lives, my life, that is how you make the best of it and make a positive change from it, I believe. My opinion. I need to do something real quick. That was called Orange something. I can't remember. Orange, something orange combined with sour diesel? No, it was Washington glue. It's a Gorilla Glue, and only a cannabis connoisseur would know what I'm talking about. There's a Gorilla Glue number 4, but here we have a Washington Glue, and it's phenomenal. It's nice. And yeah, so where was I at? Oh man, I'm toe baked. No, time to rethink life, right? And time to rethink what we want. And like I said, we want to buy land. My wife and I have been talking about this for a long time. We don't have the money to do it. You know, it's expensive to buy acreage. I mean, we could probably get away with it, but we need a dependable income to do it. And the future's unpredictable. So what do? So to come full circle to the beginning, when I said that, you know, the whole thing's falling apart, everything's fucked, what I meant was when I said I'm not nihilistic. It's not that I want to see everything collapse, even though I see the banking system as a joke. Bankers, revered, highly paid, super bonuses, and all they do is take care of our money that we earn. The blue-collared workers, the people who put in the effort, right? Just give us our gold bits and fuck off. That's the way I feel about it. But it's not nihilistic to want the system to collapse. It is utilitarian. And I want to explain why. Because I believe in preserving nature. Preserving the world for future generations to enjoy as well. So let me give you an example. If we completely annihilate ourselves, whether it be through nuclear war or extreme pollution, you know, there are a million ways that we could go. But if we prepare for these things, let me give you an example. Even putting in $50 billion, I believe it would be something like a few dollars per American to reinforce the grid, the U.S. power grid, which would resist an electrical event like the 1859 Carrington event, which took out, telegraph poles and lines and all around the U.S. But back then we didn't really rely on power yet. It was 1859, so it wasn't a big deal. If that happened today, it would fry all our transformers and it would take years to recover. And it can happen. They say they happen every 100 years or so. The government was told they could spend $5 billion or something on it and it would be reinforced, and they still haven't done it. These are the kinds of little things that we don't prepare for. We didn't prepare for this pandemic because we didn't have all the shit we needed, because we'd rather spend money on other shit, like wars, like missiles. So if we're going to destroy ourselves through stupidity, and I can say, well, if this virus takes us down a notch and completely rewires the way society works and takes down the whole market, a lot of people will suffer. But then I look at the other side of it and say, a lot of people are going to suffer anyway. Not from the virus, but just from the way that we're handling our world. Did you know that tens of thousands of people were predicted to have lived who would have died this year in China alone? You know, you can look it up, and, it's pointless to put links and try to confirm things anymore because nobody really looks or cares. Everybody wants to believe what they want, but they say the lowered pollution levels that we have right now have actually saved so many humans and probably animals, which are running wild in the streets, boars and shit. And as I've said before 3 times, there's pandas fucking in the zoo in Tokyo. I mean, pandas, they've been trying to get them to mate for 10 years. Finally, people are gone and they mate. But it's hilarious to watch how fast nature can just take back over when humans go inside for a while. And it's not that we need to give the world back to the animals. No. We need to start living in harmony with the planet that we have. That's not some hippie shit. That's common sense. Every civilization learned that the hard way. They deforested, burned their own lands. In fact, there are beliefs that tens of thousands of years ago, the Sahara, I don't recall exactly how long, but the Sahara, parts of it were desertified because humans were farming there and deforesting the area. And it's a long story, but basically did what we're doing now, which is destroying their own environment by not allowing the moisture to come in and the storms to come in anymore, and because the trees will release terpenes which call in the storms, because they there's so much bullshit science behind it, but when you put it all together in your head and you say, what are we doing? You think it's not nihilistic to want change, it's utilitarian, right? It means, what is utilitarian? It means what's the most good for the most people. And it's not some sort of an idealist idea. It's really, that's how nature works. It is utilitarian. And as far as what I mean for humans, that means that if more future generations can enjoy their lives in succession, rather than having 20 billion people in another 10 years and then all of us suffer and die at the same time, maybe it makes more sense to extend the future, because it's not just about us. It's about nature. It's about the world we inhabit. It's about deforestation. It's about the places we burn, things we chop down, things that we eat, the world that we destroy constantly for our own gain and don't seem... It's not that people don't give a shit. It's that corporations don't give a shit. And once again, that's what this whole fucking paper is about, and I really want to read it, but I'll have to get to that another time. It's never been about the people. It's a modern slavery, and it has to change. The proletariat society. So we need to preserve the future for other generations, at the cost even of society, progress, and the stock market. I hate to say it. Conservationists used to be a century ago. I watched a show earlier about the first wildlife photographer from 1906. He was a deer hunter. There's a short documentary about him. He was a deer hunter in early 1900s. Can't remember his name. And eventually they changed the regulations because they hunted so many deer. They said, okay, there's a deer season. And he'd come into town and say, oh, he really wanted to hunt deer. But he couldn't. So he'd go out at night and he'd say, well, if I can't shoot deer, then I'll shoot him with a camera. So he rigged up this crazy box to a canoe with he created his own guns that shot like powder, which would shoot a charge, which would make a flash, so he could shoot it and get the picture of a deer drinking at night on the pond. He eventually got better and better at it. He made the first trail cam in the early 1900s. People think it's some modern invention. No, there's a tripwire that would flash, a single flash, then a second flash in the camera, which would take a picture of deer jumping. Phenomenal pictures. He was a conservationist. And today, back then we had people who would go out and explore to, take wildlife photographs. And today we have Instagram influencers going in to share with millions of people some amazing outdoor adventure that will get ruined in a week because our society is so large and because people follow mindless garbage like Instagram. Sorry, that's not fair to anyone who follows real Instagram goods. I know that there are comedians, there are activists and people on there who have things to say, but